Okay, great. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Susan Macbeth. I'm the founder and owner of Adventures by the Book, and I'm very excited to bring you the first Adventures by the Book Club um, interview with Rosa Kwon Easton of 2025. We're really excited. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with our new ABTB Book Club, which we started last year, we have 7 amazing Adventures by the Book ambassadors who on a rotating basis do a book club discussion every month. And so this time we have Dorothy, Jennifer, and Simon, who are all amazing. Dorothy is from Oklahoma. Check her out. She is the book whisperer. She does book reviews. Simon is all the way in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and we love having a Canadian and a male at that, avid reader. So we're happy you're here. Jennifer is going to be leading our discussion today. She is here from freezing cold Chicago. My son just left Chicago on business and was ready to go back to Miami. He said it's way too cold in Chicago. And she's going to be introducing Rosa in a few minutes, but I did want to mention a few upcoming events that I want everybody to know about. Is coming up on January 30th is our semi-annual Pitch Fest. It's a free virtual event where we feature, I think, 15 or 20 authors in a rapid fire. They pitch to you their books so that you have a chance to, and Rosa's joining us for that, I believe.
Yeah.
So you have a chance to hear a little bit about their book. We send you a cheat sheet so you can make your own notes. And the goal is to really expose you to as many books as possible for you to consider for your next read or your next book club pick. And they're all Adventures by the Book authors, so you can schedule book club visits with them right there on our site after listening to them. So January 30th, I hope you'll be there. It's free. For those of you who are in the San Diego, SoCal region, or who want to travel here from some cold destination and want to come to San Diego, on March 1st, we are doing our annual Super Book. It's our 6th year, where our keynote speaker and performer is the internationally renowned Zorro the drummer, who has an unbelievable memoir that you just can't believe his story. You'll want to hear it. He's also going to be playing the drums. He's like Lenny Kravitz's drummer, so he's like a big deal. He's going to be playing drums. We have people coming from all over the United States and from Canada for this, so don't miss out. Tickets are still available on our website. And then the third thing I want to mention is we just opened up yesterday a new project. It's entirely new. It's for aspiring and emerging writers. If you've ever wanted written a book and need some guidance, we are starting the Writers Network starting January 27th. It's going to be a weekly virtual program. You don't have to attend every week, but it's available for you too. We record the sessions, so if you're unable to make one, you can listen to the recording. But every week we're going to be meeting with a renowned author, and they're going to be giving you advice. It's basically a year-long mentorship program to help encourage you, inspire you, educate you about the writing process. It offers the mentorship. We're talking about the craft of writing. We're talking about the business of writing. You will also get a chance to pitch, learn how to pitch your book, learn how to write a query letter to a publisher, and you will actually get to pitch your book. If you're qualified and attend the sessions that you need to, you're actually going to get to pitch your book to pretty renowned publishers, publicist agents at the end of the year. So check it out. It's not on our website yet. It should be in a couple weeks, but it starts January 27th, and we are taking signups now. So if you're interested, you can just email me, susan@adventuresbythebook.com, and I can give you more information and give you the link to sign up. So those are some of our upcoming events, but now I know you guys are all here for Rosa Kwon Easton. Her new book, White Mulberry. Our 3 ambassadors read it. And oh, actually, can you hold up your book again, Jennifer? I'm going to take a screenshot because I want a photo of this for Rosa. All right, smile, everybody. Okay. And Jennifer is going to introduce Rosa. She has questions. We'll open it up in the chat box to Q&A. Simon's going to help moderate that for us. Thank you for doing that, Simon. And then Dorothy will also have questions and be chiming in, but it's really going to be fun. And I can't wait for you to hear all about White Mulberry. Welcome, Jennifer, our moderator today.
Well, I would love to start by welcoming Rosa Kwon Easton. Rosa Kwon Easton is a writer, attorney, library trustee, and now acclaimed author of her debut novel, White Mulberry. Rosa is born in Seoul, Korea, and she is the mother of two adult children and lives with her husband and Multipu in Palos Verdes, California. She holds a bachelor's degree in government from Smith College, a master's in international and public affairs from Columbia University, and a JD from Boston College Law School. She is an Anaphora Writing Residency Fellow, and her work has appeared in numerous newspapers, anthologies, and publications, including Craft Literary, Writer's Digest, and StoryCenter.org. She has always loved reading and writing, and she believes in the power of story to educate, broaden cultural understanding, and inspire others to discover their own stories. Please welcome Rosa Kwon Easton with me. Yay, Rosa, we're so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, everyone. I am thrilled to be here. I'm actually zooming in from Hawaii, which is where my husband and I are on vacation. But Palos Verdes is actually part of LA County, and we're seeing the photos of the fires and our hearts are going out to everybody. Our home is safe, but many of our friends have lost homes, and so I just want to acknowledge, the tragedy that's happening, and to pray for everyone who's going through a hard time right now.
Well, thank you for so much for that. I'm so glad that you and your
Yes.
family are safe, but I so appreciate your empathy and compassion for those who are not in the same position right now. And I know the power of story can bring hope to so many. And I know for me, White Mulberry was that story. And so I thank you for stewarding your gift of story to bring others hope.
Oh, thank you. I'm thinking of a proverb right now that I mentioned in the book, and one of my readers recently was going through a hard time and said how much my book lifted her up. And the Korean proverb is after hardship comes happiness. And, it's a very simple adage, but I feel like in times like this, hope is really what we all have and can lean on right now. And after hardship, um, there's hope. So I hope we could all be thinking in those terms as we think about loved ones in LA or anyone who's going through a difficult time.
Well, I think that Mulberry is a great way to kick off the year on a note of hope. And
Okay.
I absolutely loved the book so much. It was my first New Year's read. And I think that a key to reading that great readers often do is savor the author's note and then the reading questions at the end.
Yeah.
And so for me, the story comes together. It's like a puzzle, and that writer's note is the frame afterwards. And to frame our discussion tonight, I'd like to start with the reading guide. So in the reading guide, you explained that the title was inspired by A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And just as A
Yes.
Tree Grows in Brooklyn was your favorite childhood book, The Mulberry Tree is your main character, Mi Young's mainstay. I was
Yes.
wondering, what are some other authors or titles that you would recommend that reflect the Korean or Asian experience for readers?
Well, interestingly, uh, the first book that I really came across where I saw myself in a book was The Woman Warrior by Maxine Hong Kingston. And she wrote Maxine Hong Kingston. It's a memoir written in the 70s about a Chinese girl growing up in California, reconciling her heritage with her American life. And in a lot of ways, I feel that Myung and her experience is going through a similar experience of reconciling who she is as a Korean um, woman, girl, teenager woman, and the Japanese society that she confronts at the time, at the place and time in history where the story takes place. And I find those kinds of novels so compelling for me personally. And that's why I think I started writing this book so many years ago. It's been a long, long journey. It is based on my family story, on my grandmother, but it took a long time to come to this point of being a published author. And just to get back to your question about some of the other books that have inspired me, I did a roundup for Electric Literature on coming of age stories set in Korea. There were many novels in there, and we can maybe provide a link to it. For readers later. But if you're interested in this, in coming of age stories for adults and also YA readers and stories set in Korea or in Asia, I would highly recommend this list. And I think one of the gems I found doing my research for that list was a novel called My Brilliant Life. It's by Aaron Kim, and it's in translation from Korean, and that's another thing that if readers haven't explored works in translation that I strongly recommend if you like historical fiction is to read translated works of authors from those countries that the story is set in, because they really have the knowledge and the experience of living in those places and reflecting on their experiences. And My Brilliant Life was a coming of age story of a boy who ages prematurely, and actually at the age of 18 is now an 80-year-old man kind of thing. It's a very unusual disease, but the wisdom that this boy carries at such a young age was so profound, and the voice of this young man was so moving. And in the end, he writes a love letter to his parents, who were teenage sweethearts and had him. And oh, I'm just going to start crying when I talk about the book. But I guess I'm just a sappy reader, kind of, and I enjoy stories that bring a lot of emotions to the front or to the page. And so I think that's what I tried to do in my novel as well.
Well, you definitely succeeded. And I think that that's what many fiction and historical fiction readers are there for. We want not only for our intellect to be engaged, but our emotions to be enriched too, and that sense of empathy. And I think that you do that brilliantly through the way that you interweave emotion and historical information that many of us, or maybe I'm speaking for myself, were unaware of before reading your story. So
Yeah.
I loved it. I also love the idea of reading translated works, and I think I'm going to add that to my resolution for 2025. So thank you for that inspiration. Um, as an elementary teacher, I always enjoy hearing what young adult books, book recommendations or influences authors have had. And I was particularly excited to read The White Mulberry because I had done many small group studies with Project Mulberry by Linda Sue Park. And that's another excellent book for kids. I think that's an award winner,
Yeah.
but an excellent story. And it brings
Yeah.
me to my next question. The
Yeah.
title White Mulberry is inspired by the importance of color, the color white in Asian history. And in
Yeah.
Korea, you talk about white symbolizing humility, a trait that we observe in Myung's character and expressed in the haiku that she writes in her journal. What
Yeah.
color would you choose to characterize your personality or your life?
Oh, that is such a great question. Well, you have held up my cover, so you know that really coral. It's hard to see because you've got your
Yeah, I've got the blur on this
I think
side. I know.
Dorothy had the book up, but the coral
Mhm.
is really my favorite color. A salmon, they call it as well. And ironically, when I went to Korea last year, I had a color analysis done. I don't know, this is kind of a modern thing where they sort of measure your skin somehow with
Oh,
some device, and the consultants let you know what colors are in your skin palette that's becoming to you, or that fits with who you are. And so ironically, that cover and my favorite colors coincide. How ironic is that? But my cover designer I had never met. I didn't know her, but I sent her a bunch of photos of images that I liked, some of which came from a Korean museum that I went to, a craft museum, which had this interplay between coral and sage green or green. And those two colors are very complementary. And I didn't know that I really had gravitated toward those colors all my life. And then to have this color analysis done, confirming that I was naturally drawn to those colors. Of course, I immediately went to my closet and wondered, why do I have so much coral in my closet? So I think that the lesson is really that to go with your gut, and that there's a reason behind your attraction to colors. Um, the symbolism, the colors are so important for a lot of reasons. And people, when the readers here who are interested in publishing a book or interested in picking up covers, asking yourselves, like, why am I attracted to this color? I mean, I think there is a scientific reason for that in some ways, but also just a fun reason. uh, Getting a color analysis done, for example, and sharing images and colors that you like with the cover designer was so instrumental. We went through 3 cover selection rounds, and it was hard to. The first round was terrible. Pink and bright blue, like just hot pink and bright blue, and then but the muted colors were more attractive, and so color is, I think, very significant. And I find also now I'm dressing more in those colors. I'm not dressed in those colors today. Actually, I do have a coral stripe thing because I'm not home, but it's interesting how I want to look like my cover, strangely, because those are the colors that are calming and give me confidence, I think. So and
I,
white, yeah, and white to Myung, of course, she wore white because she had to. The peasantry in Korea at this time, they all wore white, and part of that was to equalize the classes so that everyone, you know, could be considered equal, because they were wearing white. It was only the nobility who wore other colors in a typical day, in an everyday setting. And the character symbolized to me somebody who was very common. And so that color white was important. Um, and obviously she became a nurse, uh, and white is a symbol of uh, the medical field, and helping others, and the strength that she was able to gain from her career, um, as she developed as a character in the novel.
I love that you had a say in your book's cover. I also love your favorite color is salmon, because to me that represents a beautiful blend between white and the color red of the mulberry. And
Uh-huh.
so the combination of the white mulberry would be salmon, in my opinion. That would be the color
Yes.
that comes to mind. And that's the color that we see on the cover of your book. And it's one of
Yes.
your favorite colors. So I
Yeah.
love that.
Oh, I never thought of the blending of salmon and white. But yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Beautiful. My third question is goes along more with the Project Mulberry, and that one is, as a hardy tree that withstands the severe Korean winters and blooms over and over again in the spring, the mulberry tree is a metaphor for Myung herself.
Yeah.
What are some facts about mulberry trees that surprised you during your research? And what tree or image would you use to characterize your personality or life?
Oh, oh, such great questions. Um, so the can you repeat the first part of the
Sure.
question? Because I was
Yep.
thinking about what kind
Yeah.
of tree I would be, and then I lost
Yep,
track of the
I was
first.
thinking the same when I came up with the question. I thought this would be a good one for my book club because we can all kind of pick a different tree or a color that represents us, and that was all rooted in your story. But the
Yeah.
first question was more for my students, and that's, what facts about mulberry trees
Oh,
surprised
yes.
you in your research?
Yes. Well, besides being a hardy tree and that you could climb, um, and I wanted that to be part of the tree factor of the characteristic of the tree when I was researching trees, um, and one that provides something beautiful. I mean, of course, trees are naturally beautiful because they provide life, but um, this one provides the bark for traditional hanji paper, which is that sort of bumpy, uh, they call it hanji in Korean, but washi in Japanese, but it's mulberry paper, and journals are often made of them. Paintings, wallpaper, like the ones that have a little bit of texture and bumpiness. And if you look at the cover of my novel, um, my cover designer got it right because it has texture in it, and that's from the hanji paper. Another beautiful part about a mulberry tree is the berries themselves that they produce. Um, you can eat those berries. The leaves produce mulberry tea. At one of my book launches, I had my friend is a Korean tea master, and she sourced some mulberry tea for me. It's a green tea. It's amazing. It tastes so good and has such great healing powers and antioxidants and all these good things for your health. So I've been drinking a lot of mulberry tea, mostly for inspiration for writing my sequel, which I'm working on right now. But and also silkworms eat mulberry leaves, and they produce. We're blessed with silk from silkworms, and so the um, the multitude of ways that mulberry trees are of value to human beings was just so surprising to me, and beautiful, and was the perfect metaphor for Myung, that she was resilient, that she could transform, that she could be useful and resourceful, um, and and it represented home to her and something that she wanted to return to. So it was a perfect symbol and metaphor for me. And of course, my favorite book was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. So and being a YA crossover novel, which my agent told me that we could possibly sell it as when we first talked about the book, and when she signed me on as a client, she thought that maybe it could be a YA crossover book. And in fact, when Booklist did my review, and they're the library review platform, they said it was compelling for YA readers as well. So there is one like sort of hot chili pepper scene in the novel, but it's very subtle. And so I think it would pass muster as a YA, because I've read YA that's a lot more than that. But I think when I was writing this, I was thinking of the Bildungsroman novel, which is a coming of age, the name for a coming of age novel, when I was thinking about it, and because I loved A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which straddles really YA and adult, because adult readers, I go back and read it all the time as an adult, and so it has a lot of meaning for me.
Yeah, that novel is a classic. And now that you mention the YA crossover, I can definitely see it. And the spice that you mentioned is tasteful spice. I feel like it's classic and it's authentic to the story. And so I think that gives it meaning and makes it meaningful to the book. So yeah, I would recommend it as a YA crossover for sure, now that you've said
Yeah.
that. I
Can I?
also love I
Yeah.
love what you said about drinking lots of mulberry tea. And
Mhm.
I think that the tea also reminds me of the tea bag quote. Women are like a tea bag, you steep them in hot water and they're their strongest. And I see that in Mi Young's character. And I think it's a great book club idea. Why not meet for tea? Let's do a high tea. Or we could do a tea shop to meet there. So I think this book lends itself to creative book
Oh,
club get-togethers.
oh, I love that. And I will be attending some book clubs next week. So hopefully if anybody's listening and who, would want to welcome me as an author speaker, I'd be happy to share ideas and participate. So
That would be
yeah.
perfect. Um, my next question is more historical. I was fascinated by your exploration of passing in Asian
Okay.
society as
Yes.
at a time of oppressive discrimination against Koreans in Japan.
Yeah.
Some passed as Japanese and intermarried with Japanese, while others kept their Korean names and lived as outsiders in the land that they called home. Mi
Yeah.
Young chose to conceal her Korean identity and pass as Japanese to protect herself and her family from racial persecution.
Yeah.
And if you were in Mi Young's shoes, would you have kept your name and lived as an outsider, or passed as Japanese and assimilated to your new culture, and why?
If I were Myung, is
Yeah,
your question, right? Um, I think as an immigrant, um, and considering myself as an other in American society, at least especially at first when I first immigrated here when I was 7 in the 1970s, I definitely felt um, torn between these two identities. And I think I kind of went through phases where I was more Korean or I was more American, whatever that meant to me and to what I expected it to mean to society. And I think Myung did it in her situation to survive. It was a survival mechanism and something she kept a secret because it was what kept her alive in her mind. And um, so I don't, I think I wanted to explore um, that, and I wanted readers to see that this isn't an easy decision to make. And sometimes it's not really a decision, and it kind of ebbs and flows. And And in this novel, she embraces it because it was going to make her allow her to have an education and allow her to succeed in the society that she was in. Um, and it was easy because she's Asian, and it's not hard to tell. It's hard. It's easy to blend if you're of the same Asian uh, background. Uh, but obviously in different societies, you know, it's would be in America. I was very interested in the story and the novel, The Personal Librarian, written by Marie Benedict, about a Black woman passing as white because she was fair-skinned. So in America and in other societies, it would be more difficult to pass as another race. But in Japan at the time, Koreans were passing as Japanese in order to get a job, in order to maintain a job, in order to um, move further in their education. Many reasons. And I heard an interesting story from a Japanese American friend of mine who said that her ancestors passed as Chinese during the Japanese internment. And I'd love to read a novel, you know, or a story about that, because it's something that's in the American consciousness so much, that period of our history. Um, so I hope that the readers take away that, you know, passing happens in other parts of the world, and maybe sometimes even within our own, that we haven't discovered yet or don't know much about, and would be great to know more about. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it was
Very
an aspect of the novel that I had a cultural sensitivity reader. They called it a cultural research reader. And she sort of read my book, looked from the lens of a sensitivity reader, like how would somebody feel reading this who maybe has passed in their lives, and do I address it in an empathetic way in my book? So I was so fortunate to be able to have that level of scrutiny that uh, that maybe other writers, you know, who have gone through the editorial process may not have received. But Lake Union is my publisher. It's an imprint of Amazon Publishing, which is the historical fiction, book club fiction imprint of Amazon. And I was very impressed with their level of editing. Uh, from developmental editor to copy editor to proofreader to cold reader, Korean language reader, Japanese language reader, cultural sensitivity reader. My novel was very much vetted before it got into the hands of readers. And so um, I was grateful for that level of scrutiny, because I feel that they did catch a few things, not big ones, but there was. Do you want me to share one aspect? I mean,
Please do.
this
Oh,
could
yes,
be like
I'm
a
fascinated.
behind the scenes editorial feedback. Um, the relationship between the sisters, Myung and Bobe, her older sister that she follows to Japan, and they're very close. And there is a reference to some domestic abuse. And uh, the cultural sensitivity reader highlighted a paragraph where the sister is going to start her own family, and she was very happy, and she was hopeful that her spouse would turn the corner and would treat her differently. There weren't any explicit scenes of abuse, but there was, Mi-young was catching a sense that her sister wasn't treated well. And the sisters never really talked about it, which was another thing that, readers might wonder. It's like, well, if they were so close as sisters, wouldn't one have asked, like, hey, are you okay? But I think we keep things back from our siblings too, for different reasons. And I think she had her own reasons for, she didn't want her happiness with Hojun at the time, I think, to affect her sister's happiness. Even though she would have hoped that her sister would be happy for her. You never know. And I think she didn't really know how her relationship with Hojun was going to go in the first place. So she didn't want to dwell on it too much. But that abuse situation, I had said in the first version that things looked better. And my editor said, let's put a little bit of doubt in there because that doesn't always happen. And a reader could pick up on that and see it as disingenuous or, not nuanced and one-dimensional. So we added a sentence where Mi-young said, well, we'll see about that. Or so yes, there's hope, but she was thinking in her mind when Bobe was so happy that she was going to have a child, that Mi-young was still thinking in her mind, we'll just have to see. We don't know if that's really going to happen. But she didn't express those feelings to her sister. She let her experience the joy of having a child. So anyway, these are the little editorial things that readers don't see. And the portrayal of village life was also an aspect of the novel that the cultural sensitivity reader looked at. Also, the role of Christianity. So those were the 4 elements. Oh my goodness. Am I talking so long that I haven't been answering
Oh,
all your questions?
I
I see
was
Susan as we wind down. I was, oh my gosh, what time is it?
No, your novel is so good that we could talk about this all night. And I was worried. I thought, I only have a few questions. Are we going to like zip through them and have nothing to say? Completely the opposite. Your novel is rich with discussion material, and I am loving this conversation. I
Oh,
had no idea about the editorial process, and I love Lake Union Publishing. I've read several novels published by them. I had no idea that they were out of Amazon, nor
yes.
the level of scrutiny that they
Yeah.
apply to in the editorial process.
Yes, I was so pleasantly surprised and really blown away by the caliber of editorial response that I got. So I'm happy that I'm working with them again on my sequel.
Oh, could you, if we have time, I would love to hear a little bit about your sequel.
Yes, yes.
Yes, and then I have one more question.
Yes. Well, the sequel I envision as a continuation of what happens to Mi-young and Ko-chan after they return to Korea. But also I could see it as a standalone as well, because it's going to be structured in 2 different voices. It's going to be Mi-young's voice and Ko-chan's voice. So it'll be interesting to get into the head of a child, which is not always easy. So we'll see how that goes. But I find his voice so refreshing. After writing 300 and so many pages of Mi-young's voice and her point of view, seeing things from a child's eyes is really, I think, uh, is making my writing better and more fun and engaging. So I'm enjoying the interplay, and the novel is going to be a continuation of their lives. And like I said, from the 2 point of views, but also the conflict between parent and child, and the conflict between a parent's memories and a child's memories of home. when that family unit is displaced. So uh, I I know a lot of readers have said, you left me hanging. I'm so upset you didn't finish. And another editorial uh, behind the scenes I want to tell you is that I said to my editors, I said, I should say something about a sequel. You know, I should say something in my author's notes or sometimes they have teasers like second book, next book is coming, look forward to, but they didn't want to do it. And I respected their, I think, vision for what this, I think they wanted this to be a standalone book and that it has a complete arc and that a reader wouldn't necessarily need that second book in order to feel that this book had a beginning, middle, and end. And that was my vision for the book too. So I went with it and I trusted them to know what readers expect and hope and are expecting for the second book.
I am so excited to read the sequel now. I have never read a dual perspective between
Ah,
a male and female other than a romance in a romantic
okay,
context, and nor have I ever read the dual perspective of a mother and son in
okay,
particular. And that has so much nuance, especially with the theme of motherhood in
yeah,
White Mulberry. And that was my final question.
yes,
Motherhood is an important theme in the novel. Mi-young's nursing and midwife career set her apart from other mothers during her time, and
yeah,
she wields her nursing career as a form of personal resistance.
yes,
Yet she is also torn by her fierce love for her child. She
yes,
is compelled to grapple with some really tough questions, and I have a couple of quotes here, no spoilers. Could lying be an act of love? Was
yeah,
she being selfish in wanting her son for herself?
mm,
Maybe to have love, she had to be prepared to pay with her heart.
yeah.
How would you answer these questions in your own life or in your next novel? And I think you've kind of answered that. You've got a sequel coming out that's going to
Yeah.
grapple maybe more in depth with motherhood and the role that that's played, and then how it plays out in the life of the child as well.
Yeah. Well, being a mother of two adult children myself, I recognize how hard motherhood is and how complicated it is and how it's different for each family. And I think I'll leave it at that because um, I think motherhood stories are so important because they are so different. Um, but they're anchored by love. And so I I hope everyone looks forward to my sequel, and I am too because I'm in the middle of writing it.
Well, that is amazing.
Yeah,
Um, I have loved talking with you. I have one more question if we have time. I'm going to just pose it and maybe people can use it in their reading book clubs. The last one was White Mulberry was inspired by the life of your grandmother. It's a
yeah.
beautiful tribute to her triumph over poverty and the patriarchal racist society designed to break her.
Mhm.
This raises some important questions. What happens to the self when you leave someplace? What self do you meet in the new place? And what self do you sacrifice?
Well, I think the self evolves. I think that was a theme that I think I'm trying to express or to convey that we're always changing and that's okay. You don't have to stay one person. And and I think to embrace the self that you discover is an important act of self-determination and believing in yourself and being yourself. And I think that's my ultimate message is to be yourself, to celebrate who you are. Um, and if there's longing for that other self or a part of yourself you've suppressed or denied, to lift that out of darkness and to celebrate your whole self. So I don't know. I just kind of came up with that, but that sounds, I think really, we are, we are, a complicated, um, human being. And, I think we should give ourselves grace for all the parts of ourselves that we are.
So eloquent. I do not have words to respond to that. So I'm going to open it up to the chat right now. And if we have audience members with questions, feel free to let us know.
I think Simon is monitoring that. So Simon, if you want to unmute yourself, and thank you. Great job, Jennifer.
Thank
Yeah, I
you,
can.
Jennifer.
One of the questions would, have you read The Island of Sea Women by Lisa C? Speaking of Asian authors and that whole kind of geographic region, have you read that book at all?
Yes, I have. And Lisa C actually blurbed my novel because I know her personally. And Susan, we have, she's a mutual friend of ours as well. She has been so supportive of my writing journey. I met her like 20 years ago when she wrote On Gold Mountain, which is her nonfiction story of her Chinese American family. And she inscribed my book, uh, tell your family story, Rosa, or something like that. And that was like 20 years ago. And so along the way, she's been very supportive, and her latest email to me was, "I'm so proud of you." So writers help writers, and so I'm very grateful for her support. And I have read Island of Sea Women. I was very moved by it, about the Henya, this women sea divers off the coast of Jeju, and their traditions are dying. And I'm so happy, I'm so glad and grateful that Lisa was able to capture the evolving relationship between the women who supported this diving culture for so long in Korea.
Right. And another question from an attendee is, did you deliberately water down how difficult the Japanese were to Koreans in Japan and in Korea?
You know, I I guess I wanted to present a balanced view of the Japanese, because many of my primary resources were based on diaries of everyday Japanese living in Japan at the time, and the social history of the average Japanese person. And what I read was, I have no idea why we are in this war. You know, that like the common people did not, the government did not represent the common people. And I think that message was what I wanted to convey in my book, was that there were awful soldiers who were doing their job on behalf of the Japanese government, but there were also lay people who loved Koreans and who loved all human beings. And so I didn't want to portray Japanese society as being one way, only one way. So maybe, was I deliberate? I guess I tried to bring both sides into the story.
Right. And then I get just one final comment about your book from someone. They're wishing that they hadn't retired from teaching before they were able to use White Mulberry with their 8th grade student. They've introduced it to their former teaching partners, so hopefully he will consider using it,
Oh my
and
goodness.
they look forward to your sequel.
Oh my goodness. I am so touched. This is the joy of writing a book, because you don't know where it's going to
Mhm.
land in the world. But one of my secret dreams was that it was going to end up in schools. and be read by class. And Jennifer, the fact that you're an elementary school teacher is just mind-blowing to me, and that you enjoyed it and you think that it could be of benefit to school children. I'm really moved.
I'm just bursting at the seams because Mi-young's dream, her original dream, has come true. Her original dream was to become a teacher, and she was not able to do that. Well, actually, she is a teacher because she will be stepping into classrooms and book clubs and sharing the testimony of her life.
Yes, yes.
And that's just a good reminder that Rosa is available to visit book clubs, whether it's your personal book club, schools, libraries, other social groups. You just visit adventuresbythebook.com. We put the link in the chat box, and you can register and pick a date right there. The calendar's available, and Rosa would be delighted to come and talk to you.
I just want to say that my friend started a school in Washington, D.C. It's a micro school. I don't know I guess a small, very small school, like K-8. And I had the opportunity to speak to her her writing group of like 8 to 11-year-olds. And after I gave my talk about my book, one of the students gave me a little heart card that said, "History can't be lost, cannot be lost." And I was like, oh my gosh, this child got it. I mean, just really understood the meaning of this book. So anyway, I'm really glad for that connection.
Thank you. And I know our hour went by really quickly, but I know Dorothy had a few questions. And so Dorothy, do you want to pitch those right now?
Well, one of them was going to be about how do you say goodbye to those characters, but I know now you're not saying goodbye, you're continuing with them. But I also thought about how did you decide to end just as Mi-young goes back to Korea?
Well, when I was thinking about the story arc and the climax of the story, I always thought it was going to be fulfilling or not fulfilling her dream of returning to Korea at some point in her life. And I think her decision to take her son with her presented that climax that the book needed to bring her story arc to a close, because when she was presented with the question of whether she was going to leave her son or take him with her, that was the crucial turning point in her character, where she learned the lesson of being true to her needs and herself rather than the needs of others. So that's why I decided to end it when I did. And I was surprised that that's where it ended too, because there's so much more. My original draft covered 100 years and this one covers 15.
Well, I thought it was a great ending because it leaves it's satisfying, yet it does leave there is kind of an open-endedness to it, which you will take up.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Any other questions, Dorothy, or any of our other before we close out for the night? I mean, this has been fabulous. Rosa and I met years ago, and she invited me up to LA from San Diego one time and took me out for a Korean feast. It was unbelievable. And we talked about her writing, and I've kind of followed her talking about it for years. So it's really exciting to see it in print. I was there with her in San Diego at the American Library Association conference a couple of months ago, where she saw her first sighting of the book in public. And it was really amazing to share that moment with her and to hear such positive feedback. Everyone I know that's read the book has loved it, including our ambassadors. So I want to thank our ambassadors, Dorothy and Simon and Jennifer. Thank you for doing a great job of moderating the discussion today. To our adventurers, thank you as always for being here. We appreciate your support of literature and books and authors and adventures by the book. And we're really grateful to you. I always want to get that message across because we really do appreciate you so much. And I want to invite you to our next Adventures by the Book Club on February, all right, I wrote it down, February 5th with Piper Hughley, who you may know from her own design about Jackie Kennedy's wedding dress, but she's got a newer book coming out called American Daughter that she'll be discussing with a couple of our other Adventures by the Book ambassadors. But really a special thanks to Rosa Kwon Easton.
My gosh.
Her new book, White Mulberry. It's a fabulous book. If you haven't read it yet, hope we didn't give any spoiler alerts, but you'll still enjoy it because it's an amazing read. I encourage everybody to, and then schedule a book club visit with her. So thank you, everybody, and Happy New Year, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate this. It was really
Bye.
Bye-bye.